A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like a perfect balance of having space, but also having nice neighbors close enough to not feel isolated. The area had no streetlights whatsoever, so it was pretty dark at night, especially if it was a particularly cloudy night with no visible moonlight. That never bothered me, though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I only saw what my headlights and the front porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd, because I never smelt anything like that around my house before. I didn't see anybody nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I had just got off a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Despite the fact it wasn't even 7 p.m. yet, I decided I was just going to take a shower and call it a night. My shower went off without a hitch, and I flopped onto my bed afterwards and passed out almost immediately. I woke up sometime later, sure that I had heard a noise in my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop by my house to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand, though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone's screen blinded me. These were the days before phones had light sensors that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright I could even use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could see that it was 9-something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as somebody started running through the bottom floor of my house. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I had opened the door and stepped inside. That house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hall, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I had just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside the attic when the bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and then stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back into the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in the corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if somebody were hiding, it would be in the bedroom because they charged back into my room and turned on the light. A moment later, my closet door was ripped open. I was squatting down in the attic, just a foot or so away from the access, so that I could try and stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could really see of this person was from their knee down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans with frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, and how he would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually even be put into a mental hospital for several disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back downstairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture knocked over. The whole time, I just stayed in the attic. I had left my cell phone when I ran for the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down there without him hearing me. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb back down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was that the intruder had flipped over my bed. I assume it was his attempt to try and find me. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline beside my bed and called the police. I waited in my room for them to show up, and I only left when I heard them call out for me downstairs. The first floor was a mess, but I expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa flipped. All the books, pictures, and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened, and all the boxed and canned food had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell, though, the only thing that was missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along the fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often use to smoke something a little stronger than tobacco. The cops told me, with all the cigarette butts and paraphernalia, that he must have been watching my house for a little while that night. I then realized that strange cigarette smell I noticed when I got home from work must have been him. He must have been out there the whole time. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with family or friends that night and get that door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple hours cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found cigarette butts and foil, but I didn't see anything. The next day, I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed at the back and side of my house. I ran a phone cable up to the attic and added a landline. I never wanted to be stuck up there again without a phone. Thankfully, nothing ever happened again at that house, though. I lived there another 3 years without incident. One more precaution I took, though, was practicing getting out of bed, going to the closet, and climbing up into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved out, except now I go into the crawl space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I had been a bit slower getting to the attic, or if he had not gone to the bathroom at the end of the hall first. Well, what did you think of that one? There were a few interesting comments left on this story that I thought be fun to share with you as well. Jin Tess repeats, I set my phone aside and called my friend's name. There were a couple seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as somebody started running through the bottom floor of my house. I leapt out of bed and into the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I opened the door and stepped inside. And they say, this is terrifying. One would hope the footsteps would be running out of the house, not all of a sudden coming upstairs after you like some rabid animal. I wonder if the silence you heard was him grabbing that knife? Though if he had been watching your house, he must have known you were home Unless you thought you were asleep, maybe, given that a couple hours had passed by. All hail the attic and the closet and your instincts. OP later coming back with, I know, right? Usually having a hatch into the attic inside your closet is a bad thing in stories like this. Trailer Trash Queen then comments, this is one of the scariest stories I've ever read on here. Why was this person looking for you? Did you owe money to somebody? Did you have a stalker? Or a crazy ex? OP responds, I have no idea why they were looking for me. I do smoke weed, but I never borrowed money for it, or had more than an eighth in my house at the time, so I doubt it had anything to do with that. I have asked friends before who are more familiar with the effects of meth, and they said whatever reason he had for coming in after me wouldn't make sense sober, but it probably made perfect sense to him at the time. Well, that's terrifying. Yeah, like he said, usually having a hatch to your attic in these stories is not always a good thing. We all know about frogging. Anyways, I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're taking care of yourself. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you disliked it, give it a dislike. Subscribe if you haven't and you enjoyed the story. And I'll see you on the next one. I hope you have a good night. Bye for now.